Let's talk about the intrinsic value of revelation. Revelation is equivalent to talking to Allah or God in heaven. So, what does this mean? Well, with our perception, the boundaries of our perception is infinity. Nothing is higher than infinity. Infinity times infinity is just a higher level of infinity. Infinity taken to the power of infinity is just a higher level of infinity. So, with the boundaries of the linear perception, infinity is the highest value. Now, if we were to go beyond the linear perception of the human mind into a more non-linear perception, remember, God exists in the zero temporal dimension or the zero dimension of time, which is a non-linear dimension of time, because God exists before the invention or the creation of time. Now, because God exists before the creation of time, to really understand the truth, we must understand this dimension, a dimension completely devoid of time. And so, a value in this dimension, the zero temporal dimension, let's say G. G is a value in the zero temporal dimension which is greater than infinity because G is nonlinear. Remember, the boundaries of the linear temporal dimension is infinity, yet a dimension that is completely absent of time where God exists, there would be a value G which is greater than infinity, theoretically. Why do I bring this up? To really show you what the heavenly mind is capable of doing. Because in heaven, what causes the linear temporal dimension? Let's talk about this. The linear perception is created by the linearity of time. We count by 1 second, 2 second, 3 second, 4 second, 5. This is linear. We count by the moments, we feel the moments. We also have an internal clock in which we age in a linear fashion. We age 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Simple, it's linear. Yet in heaven, if we were to be in heaven, we would be 33 years old for the rest of our lives. And in heaven, the internal clock is absent, even though there is a time dimension, because when heaven and earth were created, this is written in the Quran, that's when the time dimension was created as well. So heaven also has a dimension of time. What we must understand is that for people to exist, there has to be a dimension of time, because the dimension of time creates an unknown. We don't know what's going to happen the very next second, and because of this unknown, a lot of things happens. The unknown creates the whole essence of us being human, because we don't know, and being human means we really don't know. And the same concept, the unknown creates excitement in our lives, because if we had known everything that has ever existed or all the knowledge in the world, we would be really bored, and we would be omniscient beings, omniscient being all-knowing beings, which we aren't. So in order to be human, you have to not know and embrace the unknown. So the linear temporal dimension creates this element of the unknown, which exists in heaven, because in heaven there's a level of excitement. Every second is different. You don't know what will happen the very next second, but every second is blissful. It is blissful to be in heaven, even though there's an element of the unknown. Remember this. So there is a dimension of time in heaven, yet the dimension of time affects us differently in heaven. Now, because it affects us differently in heaven, the logic can theoretically be different as well. Because the logic is different, this value G, which I stated before is a nonlinear value, which could be greater than the linear value of infinity. This value of G in the heavenly mind is quantifiable. That means we would know what this value G is in heaven, because in heaven, our logic is different. Our logic is different because it's not the same temporal dimension that we live in right now. Even though it's a temporal dimension, it affects us differently. Because time affects us differently in heaven, our logic is different, and you can say our logic is more enhanced. It's not the same type of linearity that we think of in this dunya or this reality. In this universe, we count 1, 2, 3, 4. In heaven, we might not count 1, 2, 3, 4. Couple of reasons why. First of all, time hits us differently, so that linear concept is different in heaven. And number two, because of materialization. Because in heaven, if you want 100,000 apple pies, you can eat 100,000 apple pies, or 500,000 cheeseburgers, or whatever you want. Materialization happens differently, yet in this world, quantitatively, things materialize one after the other. One coconut, that's what cavemen counted. 2 coconuts, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's how the numerical system evolved. At least that's what they teach us in school. And that's how it would evolve differently in heaven. So there would be a different set of logic, even though there's a temporal dimension, but time hits us differently. Remember that. So, moving forward, G would be a quantifiable value with the heavenly mind. So I'm trying to figure out the intrinsic value of the heavenly mind. And if you move up in the scale of heaven from heaven 1 to heaven 2, there would be values possibly higher than G, or more appropriately scaled, that can determine what the zero temporal dimension is, or what God is better. So what does this mean? I'm saying the higher we get up in heaven, the better we understand God. A very common and easy example to understand. The higher we go up in heaven, the more God makes sense to us. We understand God better. The closer we get to Jannatul Firdaus, or the highest level of heaven, the more we understand God. Now, when we talk to Allah, or when we talk to God in heaven, that is equivalent to the revelation. So it's an expanded mindset. What does that mean? That means the Quran makes more sense in heaven because we have an expanded mind. The perception is different. Time hits us differently, which means we have a different set of mind, an enhanced set of minds and perceptions. And this perception allows us to understand the Quran better. So the Quran makes more sense in heaven. This is the truth. The Quran makes more sense in heaven. And that's why a lot of people say the Quran is great with its surahs and its information, but for a lot of people, it doesn't hit them the right way. Truth is, the more righteous you are, your ruh is the ray of light of heaven, of your soul. So the epitome of your soul is your ruh, which is the ray of light of heaven, right? Ruh is Arabic. So what this means is the more righteous you are, the more the Quran makes sense to you, and the more righteous you are, the higher level of heaven you'll be in. So that makes sense. To the more righteous person, the Quran makes more sense. That's why it's more applicable. So in order to understand the Quran, we need to be more righteous. We need to be better. And in order for us to truly get the value of the Quran, well, truth be told, it's going to make a lot more sense in heaven with the enhanced perception, which I tried to explain as much as I could. This is a very hard concept to understand, but it's important to understand this. It's important to create an abstraction of what the heavenly mind could possibly be, because again, we live in an age of theoretical science and theoretical physics where abstraction is valued higher than the surahs of the Quran. So truth be told, everything is very scientific, but being scientific does not mean I'm straying away from Islam. I'm quantifying Islam so people can understand it more and have a stronger belief. Islam is the truth, the Quran is the truth, and believe it. The revelation talks about heaven, of Allah, of God, and this is the truth. So I'd like to end this by saying, remember, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allah is always with us. God is always with us.